Hey everyone, Andy here from NoiseGate, and welcome to our mini-series of drum mic tips and tricks. We're going to break down some techniques in which you can use for recording at home, in the studio, and for live miking as well. So let's get stuck into it and break this stuff down. All right, so this technique of overhead placement is just a mono mic. Nice and simple. Benefits of using this technique: phase issues, kept to a bare minimum, just with one, so you're not aiming to keep two microphones in phase and align them perfectly. So that's one benefit. If you're using it with minimal miking, perhaps just a 3-mic technique, such as Kevin Parker from Tame Impala has utilized that sort of technique on his earlier records. You can add a bit of limiting, a bit more compression, and generally get a bit more punch out of this sort of technique. In terms of placement, it's pretty straightforward, just dead down the center. So aiming sort of down towards the snare, trying to get sort of that kick and snare lined up as best as possible. So this is what this mic just sounds like on its own. Okay, so in keeping with simplicity with the mono overhead, I've just introduced the kick mic and snare top mic to go with this mono overhead. So let's just see what sort of drum sounds we can pull with just 3 mics. All right, so this next technique is XY, an XY configuration. So what that means, you've got a stereo pair closer together at a sort of a 90-degree angle, or as close to as you can. And with an XY configuration, you want to have your left and right panned hard. So all the way left, all the way right. And this is what it sounds like just on its own. Now that we've heard the XY configuration isolated on its own, this is how it sounds in context with the rest of the close mics. Keep in mind the distance of the mics as well, sort of a little bit sort of lower, so you're sort of capturing that sort of whole sort of kit sound as well. So this is what it sounds like with the close mics. All right, so this next overhead technique is a space pair. So a little wider than XY, a little bit more cymbal-centric as well. So a little bit more focus on the sound of your cymbals rather than an overall sort of sound of the whole drum kit. So as you'll notice, we've got a nice sort of height, capturing a little bit of room ambience, but really we're sort of aiming to capture the definition of the cymbals. So one over here is facing right down on a ride cymbal, and to my right, we've got it just hanging over the crash and the hi-hat. So it's getting that nice blend of the two. Ideal placement really if you don't have a dedicated hi-hat microphone as well. So, and again, we're going to be panning these hard left and hard right. So let's see what they sound like on their own. So now that we've heard the space pair on their own, we've introduced the rest of the close mics, and we're just going to see how they sit with the rest of the kit fully mic'd up. If you've been keeping up to date with our other drum mic technique videos, unless otherwise specified. Any of the recordings that you would have heard have utilized the space pair as well. So the next overhead technique that we're going to have a look at is a little less conventional than what we've looked at previously. It's known as the Glyn technique. Glyn was an engineer that worked a lot with Led Zeppelin, using pretty minimal miking. But anyone familiar with John Bonham's sound, it's proves that you don't really need, a bunch of close mics to get some really big fat sounding drums. So what's a little bit different about this technique? It's spread pair, but you've got your first mic quite high up, directly down facing the snare drum, and then our second mic is over to the side, looking over at the snare drum across the floor tom. I know this is going to look really weird on camera being a lefty, so take into account where you're going to be panning your mics as well. So sort of 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So the microphone just down looking at the snare is a little off center, and then the one coming across from your floor tom is going to be fairly hard pan to the other side. So this is what they sound like together, and it's a bit of a sort of all-round sort of flavor. So now we're going to hear the Glyn technique just with the two overheads and kick drum, which was fairly common as to how Glyn would use this technique from all accounts. So just literally a kick drum, two overheads. Let's see what that sounds like. For this series of drum mic tips and tricks videos, we're utilizing the DP concert series of microphones. For more information, you can check out the AKG website for these microphones. And whilst you're on there, you can check out the more affordable DP Session 1, which is a great entry-level mic pack. And for those looking for a more high-end solution, the DP Premium pack is worth checking out as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Keep up to date by subscribing below. See you next time.